Hello and welcome to Bare Naked Moms. I am Alana Buckley.
And I'm Alana Level.
Our guest today is the brilliant Dr. Corinne Low. She's a Wharton professor and economist who researches household and gender economics. By the way, we are both English majors, straight up. And it was pretty exciting for us to get this crash course in how to apply what to us is the fancy rules of economics to our personal everyday lives.
To me, it was like the mysterious world of economics.
Yeah, mysterious. Yeah, and intimidating.
Yes.
I think she makes it very unintimidating. She makes it really approachable.
Agreed.
For not whatever brained people we are. Are we right brained or left brained? What are I don't know. But the English major brained people that we are.
Dr. Low's new book is called Having It All: What Data Tells Us About Women's Lives and Getting the Most Out of Yours. And spoiler alert, the professor uses her research to explain why women can't, in fact, have it all, and therefore why so many of us feel like we're failing on all fronts. She also lays out a plan to set more boundaries, reclaim our time, and correct inequalities in our relationships.
I love this book so much. I'm going to give it's going to be my Christmas book. My Christmas, like, you know how people they have like a thing that they do every Christmas and they send it around like a Christmas fairy to all of their like nearest and dearest.
I've always aspired to be a person.
Yeah.
Like
the muffins from this special place in South Carolina, or the toffee or the taffy from like whatever. This is going to be my Christmas fairy gift to my nearest and dearest this year. So I'm excited.
Funny you should mention that. I already sent a copy to my best friend from college because one of the things we bond over is trying to find the right household balance, never finding it, and then blaming our husbands because obviously it's their fault.
Obviously. Well, speaking of balance, it's like what she's telling us is like balance the checkbook. Like your life is a checkbook and it needs to be balanced. It shouldn't be like balance shouldn't be this like ever elusive, like moving target. Like think of it like a checkbook.
It's possible.
Balance it. Done. All right. Without further ado, please enjoy our conversation with the brilliant Dr. Corinne Low. Well, Dr. Low, welcome to Bare Naked Moms.
Thanks so much for having me.
We've both read your book, and you are a bare naked mom.
Can you hear my pump running in the background right now? Because that's what's happening right now.
Well, actually, I can hear it. I can't see it. So not totally bare and naked, but you definitely fit the bill for listeners and guests and what we're all about here. So let's dive right in. A few years back, it certainly seemed to anyone looking in, an outsider looking in, that you had all the puzzle pieces to put together a happy life. You had a dynamic job in a very serious career. You had a new baby, a home that you owned with your partner, your ex-husband. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler.
Sorry, we were going to get to that. But you had a marriage, you had a home that you owned with your spouse, and yet you were on the verge of serious burnout and collapse. Tell us why.
Yeah, I felt like the fun part of my life was over. I was like, oh, is that just it? This is what life is like now, is that I'm depleted and exhausted all the time. I'm so drained and I don't even feel like I can love parenting because I can't be present for it. I was commuting from New York City to my job in Philadelphia. It was 2.5 hours each way. And I had grown up such a staunch feminist that I think I thought like if I just wanted it enough and worked hard enough, I could be an equal to men at my job and in my marriage. And what I was finding was the opposite. I was watching as I could see my male colleagues had more time than me. So they were getting more done. They were publishing more papers. And that's the metric of success in my field. I'm an academic. So they were publishing more papers. And then at home, even though I was actually the breadwinner, I was the one who was carrying that load of, oh my God, daycare's canceled. I'm in another state, but let me figure out who's going to pick up my son, right? And the nadir of that period was, I talk about in the book, was I was pumping in the Amtrak bathroom and there was track work. And so I wasn't going to get home in time for bedtime. And I just started bawling because I felt like I didn't have anything. I wasn't meeting my goals at work, and I wasn't getting to be the kind of mom I wanted to be either.
Tell us a little bit more about what so many of us as women are trying to be, as professionals, as partners, as moms, and just why it doesn't add up?
I think I've looked at the time use data, and so I can tell you scientifically it doesn't add up. Okay. We are trying to do more than we ever were before. Our careers are ever more demanding. Gender roles have converged at work. So we in our minds, we should be able to be equals to men. But then when you look at what's happening at home, men's time doing housework actually hasn't budged since the 1970s. So men's roles haven't changed. And then you add to this the fact that parenting time has skyrocketed. Starting in the 1990s, we see just this parenting time off the charts. Moms today spend twice as much time with our kids as moms a generation ago. And so if what having it, quote, all means to you is that you're going to be an 80s super career woman and an Instagrammable trad wife, well, the bad news or the good news, because let me empower you to choose something different, is that those are two separate full-time jobs and they don't actually fit in one 24-hour day.
Really, you're just talking math.
Yeah. Literally.
This is very simple math. This is the squeeze. So you talk about squeeze in many different ways, but it's literally that math of coming on this end and coming on this end, and then what happens. And, we all know there's so many different kinds of squeezes, with aging parents and young parents, or this is a time in your career, which is so unfair biologically. This is a biological issue of for women to build the family, there is a very specific timeline for that.
It's the timeline when our careers require investment, and that career timeline was built for men. And so it's the same time that I coined this term reproductive capital to talk about the value of our fertility and our fertile period. And it's the same time reproductive capital is depreciating is when our careers should be accelerating. And then because those investments in our career haven't paid off yet, we also can't throw money at the problem. And so, there's a graph in the book where I show the squeeze visually, and I show this mountain in our time that's squeezing out our leisure and our sleep and our self-care. And I think it's so important, to know what that data looks like, because then you're oh, it's not just me. And if I had seen that chart, right when I was in that thick of it and crying in the Amtrak bathroom, right, I think that would have offered me some solace. And that's why I wanted to get this into the book and share it with people, because I just feel once you see it, you're oh, that's why I feel like this. Oh, okay.
One sad thing that I am left thinking about is that there have been real casualties in terms of women's careers. I felt that squeeze when we had kids, and my reaction was that I should take a back seat to my career. Mm-hmm. I was happy, but I wasn't really going for it anymore. Then I went part-time. Then I stopped working altogether. Now I'd love to get back in a different way. It's really hard. And I just feel there's still so much to be done for women like me not to leave the workforce.
Yeah. And that's not just you. And that's part of what I find a little bit tragic about the squeeze and where we need policies to step in, is that I see that time on childcare and housework come down, but women's time on work and their salaries don't go back up, because there's a lot more exit ramps than there are on ramps, right? And so when women kind of make that decision to accommodate this temporary period in life, it permanently affects their earning power. And then, by the way, it permanently affects their economic security, because what if that marriage doesn't last, or what if their husband gets laid off, or, gets injured or ill, right? And now they don't have that career. And so, there's individual ways to think about it. And that's some of the strategies that I offer. But then there's also things that we need from policymakers, right? To say how do we create those on-ramps? Because this is a huge waste of tremendous talent and innovation that could be fueling our economy.
You offer us a different way. It's not here's a different tactic to get to the thing that you didn't get to in the last book that told you how to, it's not it's a totally different way of thinking about what it means to have it all. And part of that is placing value on our, and really looking at what brings us joy, really looking what brings us purpose, and using this tool which is part of the genius of you in this book, in the tool called utility function. For all us non-econ majors out there, tell us what utility function means and how it's going to save us as parents.
Yeah. So I loved what you said, because that's exactly what I was going for, is that I feel like we have been like conditioned to think that like our goal in life as women is to maximize our career success. And it's like, that serves the interests of our bosses, that serves the interests of capitalism, but that's not actually our goal in life. So I think in order to define what does it mean to have it all, you have to be like, what am I trying to do here? And there was this tool from economics I think is really useful to do that, which is that when we model humans, we model people as maximizing something called utility, the same way we model firms as maximizing profit. And that's how we know, oh, they're going to end up laying off this person or switching to this product line because they're maximizing profit, right? We model humans as maximizing utility, which is not the reason we need a new word, is because it's not quite just happiness, because sometimes we have to do something that like doesn't feel like happy in the moment, like, you know, turn off Netflix to like work on a project or set a limit with our kid, but we know it's serving our deeper values. And so utility represents that deeper, you know, sum total of meaning, joy, fulfillment over the course of our lifetimes. And when you figure out what brings you utility, then you can figure out the things that you actually need in your life, and therefore like what it means to be successful, because we cannot define success according to these old metrics that, as we just talked about, don't add up.
And I mean,
can we pause for 1 sec while I turn off my pump?
Absolutely.
This can be totally. You know, on the blooper reel of you know, this is what it is like to launch a book. Well,
we're having a pump. We're having a pump pause.
Yeah. Well, you have a 4-month-old.
Okay. How much did you pump there?
It's a lot. It's, you know, what, this, because I, you know, because I just had to go tape like live radio, and I like, it was last minute. And so I was like, I thought I put like everything I needed for my pump, but of course I had washed it and like forgotten one of the parts. So did not have my pump with me. And so now—
And you need all the parts with those pumps.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like a zillion of them. So I have a lot of milk here because I went too long without pumping. But now I feel great and ready to go, and my boobs don't make noise anymore. So,
great.
We should put this clip on social. All right.
We should. It would probably make us far more successful.
Yeah, because this is what it looks like.
The actual content.
As the actual content. I noticed a lot, especially in our town, that there are these women who have left work, like left their career paths. And these are like very expensively educated people who are very intelligent and very driven, but have left these paths, and they almost like put all of that energy, not almost, they do, all of that energy that was going, you know, to their corporate law jobs or to whatever, to their high powered careers into parenting.
My friend who lives in Palo Alto, you know, it says that she sees this at her kid's school, that it's like, there's these women who have like Stanford law degrees, right? But like that career wasn't compatible with the type of mom they wanted to be. So now they're putting all of that human capital and organizational talent into like the bake sale. And it's a lot.
Right. And it's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot for everybody. But in your book, one of the things you say that you highlight is when parenting, like in the 90s, when parenting became not just like, you know, there was someone in my uterus and then it came out of my uterus and then it was like, I had to feed and clothe it. And then it went to school and then it got married and, you know,
and then you're done. Yeah.
And then we're done. But that it became like a whole thing unto itself. So can you just talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Because this is a parenting podcast.
Yeah. And I think this is so important. It's important for us to understand, so that we're empowered to make choices, is like, where did this come from? This like big time use squeeze. So I think there's part of it that's very meaningful, which is that prior to the 1980s, we actually like didn't understand child development. And so we like didn't understand, like the science wasn't there, that like you needed to hold your babies and talk to them, and that formed little neurons in their brain. And you needed to sit on the floor with your toddlers and play enriching toys, right? And so, you know, literally we just thought you could put the baby in a crib. And we see that reflected in like the childcare standards at the time. And so this actually also connects back to why childcare costs are so out of control, is because in the 1980s, you could have 20 to 30 infants in a room, each of them in their own cribs, and you just assembly line give them each bottles, right? Versus today, when many states have 4-to-1, you know, child to caregiver mandated ratios because we understand more about how a human being gets made and how important our time is as an input into that. And so that science is coming out in the 1980s. And then what really accelerates it is Dr. Sears' book on attachment parenting in the very early 1990s. We see parenting time start to skyrocket. We see breastfeeding start to come back in. Moms a generation ago were not pumping when they returned to work. Every parent listening can picture that intensive bedtime routine where you are reading stories like, 8,000 books, or if you have older kids, you're processing the day's highs and lows, and like you're exhausted as a parent and you just want to go lay down and you're like, is this kid ever going to sleep? Growing up in the 1980s, my bedtime routine was go to bed. We were out biking until it got dark, no snacks, no water bottles. Like we must have been very dehydrated, right?
Yeah.
And yet you're here.
Right? And yet, I'm a Wharton professor. It was fine. No, I think there's a piece of this that is like, it's this beautiful affirmative choice to give our kids something different and something that is really valuable. And it's tremendously costly in terms of our time. So what we need to do is like wrest back control from like the guilt and the expectations and separate out what is actually giving me a return, what's actually giving me a payoff in terms of it actually affecting utility and actually affecting my kids' future life and, healthy physical and socio-emotional development. And what is driven by almost like an arms race. There's some economists who write on this who call it the rugrat race, right? Where it's like, oh, our kids have to have 8,000 activities and they have to have like a CV when they apply to college, And therefore, what can we say no to? For me, the biggest cure for my mom guilt was seeing my relationship with my son blossom when I was getting my needs met. And that's the truth, is that our kids would so much rather have us be calm and connected and patient with them than have whatever the thing is, driving to a million activities, making those hand-decorated birthday cupcakes or that homemade baby food that's making us insane.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
That relates to such a powerful message in your book about time being our most valuable asset and the thoughtfulness that we should put into the hours of the day and how we're spending them, because there are only so many of them. Could you speak a little to that, how you apply it in your own life?
Yeah. So once you understand, utility, then you see that your time is your means of making utility directly. You spend it doing things that you like, and that adds up to this value over the course of your lifetime. And it puts into perspective the role that our careers play, because our careers are not actually really a source of utility themselves. Maybe we like them, right? But I often ask people, what would you do with your time if money was no object, if you were independently wealthy? And even people who like their jobs, they never say, I would spend 60 hours a week doing that, right? They might say like, sure, you might be like, I would spend like 5 hours a week doing podcasts. It's kind of fun, right? But there's so much else that we want to do. And so it puts into perspective, the role of our jobs is to turn our time into money so we can spend that money on things that we do value, right? That's how we make utility. But time is how we make utility directly. And so if we put too much of our time into that career bucket, right, we're actually going to end up with less utility, because there's only so much happiness that money can buy, right? And there's so much more that you need to create through spending time with loved ones, for resting and pursuing, artistic fulfillment, or exercising, or, eating healthy, yummy food, right? And all of those things require our time. And so I want to reframe again what we're trying to accomplish in life, to say that this vision of success that is like, it's about getting the most accolades in our career, that is not what we're going to look back on when we're 85 years old, hopefully in a rocking chair on a front porch somewhere, and say, like, that filled my life with joy and meaning.
When you think and talk about all the different kinds of moms out there, we'll get to your advice on the boundaries you can set in your relationships, in your household, on having more equal relationships with your partners. But with stay-at-home moms, how do they avoid the idea that, or can they avoid the idea that everything on the home front is their issue? It falls in their bucket of responsibility. or stay-at-home dads.
Yeah.
When their partner is the one out there earning the money.
Yeah. And this is really important because like there is so much to do on that home front that the idea that, one person can do every single thing, I mean, that doesn't add up either, especially with multiple kids. And so, I always hear these stories of like the man will come home and he's working all day and he's like, oh, I'm so tired from working all day. And if somebody was a stay-at-home mom, they're like, me too. What I was working all day, right? I was just working here, like, right, in this little child production factory that we run out of our homes. And that's also a full-time job. So I think a really good tip of how to look at this, because it could be one person's market work, one person stayed home. It could also just be one person makes more, their career is more demanding. I look at equality of leisure in the household. So I tell people to look at how much time do you get to go to the gym? How much time do you get to see your friends? How much time do you get for your artistic pursuits? Or whatever that is, whatever your hobby is, right? And if we are really treating those contributions in the household as this economic production that's tremendously valuable that it is, then she should also be able to then say, and now it's my time to go to the gym by myself, right? So if both people aren't getting equal leisure time, that's the tell to me that you are stuck in this old trope that says because his career what he does with his time has a paycheck attached to it, that's more valuable. When you as a household have actually made the decision that it is really valuable for her, and it's often her, right, to be investing in child human capital and the functioning of the household and all of those things that make things run seamlessly so that he can go to work every day.
Mm-hmm. We kind of have like a little like real life pickle for you
I love
it. So here we are. We're two stay-at-home moms, not working at anything that's bringing in any money. We both have 3 children, and our husbands, I guess, do the financial providing. Not only are we not making any money, but we're actually spending money on this venture. Okay. So no money's coming in, money's going out. So you're getting the flow. And one of the challenges I think that we're both up against in this new venture, which is for, it's Bare Naked Moms, this podcast, is that in order for this to be successful, it needs to be treated as a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, successful in terms of like, so we're not paying for it anymore, or, so we build a really big community and we're helping an X number of people, or, what we can get into the granulars like offline about what success means. But like, I think we all kind of know what success means in terms of a venture. And in reality, even though in order to get to that success, it needs to be a full-time job and treated as such, in reality, it gets a side hustle status because we are wearing all those home family hats too. And it's hard. It really feels hard to pitch to our partners that we shouldn't be doing these things, these domestic things, we'll call them, when we're not bringing in any money. And they are. And what guidance do you have for this kind of conundrum where you want to pursue something that, sure, eventually does bring in money, but for right now it doesn't? It's like an investment. It's an investment, but it can't be truly successful as an investment if you don't frame it. You know what I mean? It's a hard thing to
I would ask right
navigate.
now to everybody, to you and to everybody in that situation, what would that conversation look like if you were in law school?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we understand that law school is full-time and the goal of law school is that I get a salary at a big law firm, right? When I finish law school, right? But there are absolutely stages of any career where what we're doing is investing and we're building something that only has a return later, right? And, my grandparents, I mentioned this story in the book, had that very traditional relationship where she was a stay-at-home mom and, he was a big-time corporate lawyer. I only found out later that she actually worked as a secretary while he was in law school, and that this was actually a broader phenomenon. It was called putting the husband through a PhD degree of, the wife was working so that he could get that degree. So I think being very straightforward that there are economic returns, even though they're not happening right now in this instance, right? The idea is that this is something that is going to have economic returns and something that's worth investing in as a family because of what it gets you in the future, right? Is this potentially additional income stream, and an additional income stream that is compatible with family life, because maybe you have a little bit more control and flexibility with your hours versus if you had invested in a more traditional income stream like going to law school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Low, before we go on, we talked about what the time in your life when you were reaching like a real kind of breakdown status. But I think we need to tell people where you are now and what's happened in between.
Yeah, so it's funny because we're so full circle, because I was pumping in the Amtrak bathroom and now I'm pumping on the podcast, but life is very different now. I reached, and I'm cautious to say that this is not a prescription for anybody, because I think the book has a lot of tools for trying to really have these discussions with your partner and make your relationship work. But I reached a point in my marriage where it wasn't working anymore. And we had tried, and I had tried. And so I got divorced. And when I did that, I moved to Philadelphia, and I went from a 2.5-hour commute to a 7-minute commute. And I was so worried about how hard everything was going to be as a single mom. But I actually found that it was easier. It was easier because I knew that I was accountable for getting everything done. And so then I also gave myself permission to get the help where I needed it, because I wasn't counting on somebody else to do it or to pick up some of those pieces. It was also about living in a cheaper city. And that's one of the things I talk about in the book, is a potential shift. There's lots of shifts. Divorce is one, but moving to a cheaper city, right? What possibilities does that open up? And then I decided I really wanted to have another kid. And at the same time I was dating, and I was dating women, because I was kind of like, I'm done with men for now. And the thing that, spurred me to think that way was that I just was so frustrated that as a feminist, gender was kind of making some of these decisions where, even though I was the breadwinner, there was just this quiet, unspoken expectation that I was still going to be the one to take on these roles. That it was actually interesting because my husband was working on starting a business. But I knew when COVID hit and suddenly we had no childcare, when I saw relationships where the gender roles were flipped and it was the women who were working on starting a venture, right? They were the ones who were expected to absorb the shock, right? But then because in our relationship, because of those gendered expectations, I was expected to do it, even though I was on the tenure track at Wharton. And that was this period where, if I made tenure, that was financial security for our whole family. So I decided I wanted to have another kid. I was dating women. And I started going through IVF, and then I met my wife, the person who's now my wife, and we had a baby together in May. And so, in a new chapter of getting to do this early parenting phase differently with, more support. Although, because I'm trying to launch a book at the same time, and my wife just got an in-office job after a long period of being remote and working from home, we are back in the squeeze, and it is hard. And we're navigating
even
it.
with a woman.
Yes.
Even with a woman.
Yes.
Okay.
This is bringing up a lot. I want to talk about the squeeze continuum, and that, this utility function can really offer you clarity on the squeeze you're in and why. And let's say that you figure out that squeeze like you did with the New York situation in your ex-husband, and and no more squeeze. And then now you're in another squeeze. So this is kind of an ebb and flow. And what do you do when you get to the next squeeze? It's just the same set of, like the same critical thinking and the same utility function, or?
Well, I think when you're in a squeeze, you have to, once you recognize that, right, and you're able to acknowledge it and also acknowledge it as temporary, then you have to radically prioritize what matters and get rid of everything else during that period, right? And so I joke in the book about throwing out your houseplants, because yes, this is not going to be the period where I'm on book tour and my wife is like opening a new like venture in person. This is not going to be the period where I have that herb garden on my windowsill that I've always wanted. Okay, I would love to have the goddamn fresh herbs, but like I'm not going to. So, you have to say, what am I going to let go of? And so right now that's like, all right, it's going to be home cooked food, less than I would like. It's going to be that sometimes we all eat dinner different places, even though, I'm one of those people who I love the family dinner, but it's going to be sometimes like, hey, I'm throwing a cheese stick at my kid on the way to soccer practice instead, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to be just letting go of these expectations that are not compatible with the reality of my life. And, a lot of those expectations, they come from women on Instagram who are lying to you. And they're lying to you because for them, there is no trade-off between their careers and this aesthetically perfect home life they're presenting, because that is their career. That is their livelihood, right? And you're just as good at your job too. But you can't actually do that at home, right? That like easy, healthy pasta dish or whatever. And be trying to invest in something, invest in a venture, invest in your career, invest in school, whatever it is. And so you gotta let it go. You gotta say, hey, it's okay. And my life is going to be a book with many chapters. And you know what? I'm going to get that herb garden one day. I am, but just not right now.
Yeah. Okay. I love that.
Or maybe never.
Or maybe never. No,
or like the store has great herbs, you know what?
Yeah, I am like a perfect example of the herb garden little pickle, because I want that. I want to be the person with the herb garden with the fresh rosemary and the basil and I want to pluck my tomatoes with my kids. Yes. And it's, oh no, that one's ripe. Let's go for it. And this is where I feel like a big failure. The herb garden. It's the herb garden. It's
and
the house
me
plant.
too. And that's why I wanted to use that example, because I realized that the houseplants made me feel so bad. And I wanted to like name that I was like, it is something, because like, I don't think a man has ever felt bad about that, right? Has ever felt bad that they're not picking the tomato with their kids. And it is really something about women and the expectations we've taken on for ourselves that we just think we should be able to do it, right?
It's masochistic.
And I apply that logic to this idea of outsourcing, that I think we feel guilty about outsourcing because we've bought into this narrative that like, we should be able to handle it. I should be able to cook for my kids and clean and have my career. But it's like, when we look at male coded tasks, we don't apply that same logic. It's not, but my husband should be able to like fix the car. He should be able to fix the roof and have his career, right? We understand that there are trade-offs, that if you're really trying to invest in, a venture in the market, that it actually means that your time has value. And if you put it into doing something like that, right, that, there's an opportunity cost. And so I want us as women to actually get back to valuing and respecting our time, and then give ourselves permission to not have the tomato, and find other special moments with our kids. Because as I said, what our kids care about is our patience with them and our connection with them. And sometimes trying to give them those aesthetic markers of a beautiful childhood is actually interfering with the connection, because we are so depleted in trying to make that perfectionist reality work.
You mentioned that even though, getting a divorce and eventually falling in love with a woman were part of your journey to a happier place, that, that's not, everyone can't do that. As tempting as it may be. Can you talk about how people can renegotiate their deal with their partners, to borrow your language from the book?
As women, we're sometimes scared to try to get better deals for ourselves, because we think that means a bad deal for someone else, right? Or we think it means we have to go in and be really aggressive and be like, I need this or whatever. But what we need to recognize is that there are win-win solutions, because if both people are able to make this work and stay married, you're creating so much more value and surplus than each person having to pick up the pieces and kind of start over after a divorce, right? So it is going to pay off for both people. And I think your husband doesn't want to be a low-level junior employee at home either. So if you can promote him to co-CEO and take real shared ownership of the work that needs to be done in the household, I think that's a real win-win solution. But it's going to take some time, and it's going to take surfacing some issues and surfacing some labor that's been invisible. And so that's why I recommend for people that they start by tracking their time, and hopefully your spouse is going to buy into this and agree to do it with you. You can do it for a week. If you go to my Substack, it's CorinneLow.substack.com. I have a tool to do it. And you basically just keep track of this is what I was doing with my time, because what it surfaces is, oh, he went to work for 8 hours and worked for 8 hours, and she ordered groceries on a Zoom call and confirmed a play date and got some shoes because the shoes are too small, right? It shows the way that women's time is Swiss cheese. And I think men want to do half, they want to do their share, but they are thinking half of, this tiny little slice of pie and they don't see the entire pie. And so tracking your time, it takes some of the defensiveness out of it because it's data. You can't argue with the data.
As I was doing some of the exercises that, some of the prompts in your book of like, okay, at the end of this chapter, write down 6 things that like fill you up and like make you smile and bring you joy. And then, 6 things that, give you purpose or whatever it was. I found myself a little bit performative and just like I can't actually say that, or like, how do you stay honest?
I think what you just said was so insightful. And I thank you for your honesty here, because don't we have those moments where you're like, wait, do I actually think this or feel this? Or is this like a script that I have, right? Am I performing something? And yeah, it is hard because we've gotten so many societal messages about what we're supposed to want or how we're supposed to feel. I liken it to like, we have to remix the sound. We have to turn down the volume on like all of these other messages and turn up the volume on like what we really value and need and want. And it takes paying attention. So, paying attention and noting, how do I feel when I'm doing this thing, right? How does this thing that I thought I was supposed to want, do I actually feel good doing it? Paying attention to like, oh, I said yes to this thing because it made me feel good to say yes to someone who was asking me something, but paying attention to the long-term trajectory of that. Well, now it's 2 weeks later and I'm doing the thing and I feel really depleted and annoyed and overwhelmed. And then I need to remember that next time to be like, okay, that short-term benefit, that little like, ping we get, because we do get these pings of rewards from just making everybody else happy. I think because our brains evolved at a time when we needed our community to get us through the famine. We needed to make sure everybody else was happy with us. But now being the world's best PTA volunteer is not actually a matter of life or death, but your brain still feels like it is, right? So I do think it takes some conscious like analysis, right, of our own like feelings and our own experiences. And that's especially hard because one of the things I write about in the book is that part of what happens to women as we become mothers is we learn to deprioritize our own experiences, right? That what matters is the experience of our kids. Does my kid have a smile on his face? That means that this was a good day, right? Instead of, did I actually enjoy that? And, how did that feel for me? And so, yeah, I'm asking women to get back in touch with their own experiences and being the protagonists of their own lives.
How has your work impacted the mom you are?
Yeah, so I definitely think about it. I have a son who's 8, and I really think about the data that I have on kind of men's time use and how little it's changed over time. I really think about that and trying to, hopefully raise him to realize that like you have to bring more to the table because women are bringing so much to the table right now, right? You can't just bring a paycheck. Like she has her own, right? You need to be able to show up as a full partner. And what does that mean? And I think, if men are able to bring some of that more richness to their skills to the table, they're going to be happier in the long run. They're going to be better partners, but also they are going to be happier because they're going to be able to find connection with other human beings, which is something that we all want. I think this male loneliness epidemic is connected to like the falling fertility rate, right? It's like we're failing to connect because I think men in some ways haven't evolved. And I think that that's why I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that they will, and I'm optimistic for my son. So that's one piece of it. And then another piece of it, I think, is that using the language of economics and understanding my time with my children as investments in their human capital and as something that therefore had an enormous economic return. I know it sounds a little bizarre to say that, but that gave me permission to love being a mom and love spending time with my kids and to say, all right, that's where my values lie. And so it's okay if someone else is publishing more papers than me, or it's okay if somebody else is, getting X, Y, and Z done that I'm not getting done, because I am choosing to create economic value by putting this puzzle together with my son.
You've just come out with this book. You've just had a new baby, different marriage. Do you have it all? At this moment in time, do you feel like you have it all?
because I don't have that herb garden, right? What I say in the book is that we have to get comfortable with having it almost. Hashtag having it almost. Okay. So I absolutely have it almost. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to look Instagrammable and aesthetically pleasing. And in fact, everyone's not going to have a smile on their face all the time, but my life is rich and full and rewarding and joyful.
All right. Do you have just a few?
Yeah. I'm good on time. Yeah.
For a lightning round? Okay.
Dr. Low, what are your two favorite things about being a parent and your two least favorite things?
I love being a parent and I am totally unapologetic about that. So, I love the snuggles. And I love that my 8-year-old still likes to snuggle and give me hugs and be really tactile. I love seeing them learn new things. That's my 4-month-old, it's rolling over, right? And my 8-year-old, it's all of these other things and the new words he comes home using. The other day I said, we're literally leaving right now. And he said, really? I thought we were metaphorically leaving right now. And then one of my least favorite things is connected to that. I hate that every time I love meeting the people that they're becoming, but I hate that every time they learn something new, I lose the version of them that they used to be. I wish that I could like Russian nesting dolls. I'm sorry, but that would be creepy, but I wish I could hold on to them because I love every version of them. And so I hate how fast it all goes.
Okay. What's the children's book that you might get caught reading alone without the kids?
I was going to say one that was like a TV show, Bluey, because I loved Bluey. And like my son at some point lost interest and I'd be like, can we watch Bluey? And so then at some point, for like the holidays, he bought me like a Bluey pillow because he was like, I know you love Bluey. So
cute.
Yeah. So I did love Bluey. So we'll go with the TV show instead of a book.
Okay. All right. Fine. What is the thing that you do just for you? And when you're doing it, you forget for an hour or 2 or 30 minutes that you're a mom?
I really like yoga. And my big thing that I've learned, because I'm always like, I know how to do yoga. Why don't I just do yoga at home? It's because no, what I need is the environment where it's rude to have your phone. You can't stop and pick up something around the house. Like I do need to be transported someplace where somebody tells me what to do, because then I kind of give myself permission to not worry about all those other things. And so I think that's I would give myself a hard time to be like, I could do yoga every day by myself. Why don't I do it? And it's like, no, because I need to go someplace else and I need somebody to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I think that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you so much. It was such a nice conversation to have, and to have it with you was a real treat and gift.
I feel all filled up inside.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much for reading the book and for honoring it with your great questions. It's just like, that means the world to me. And I'm so glad to see that it's resonating with people.
One thing we didn't get to that I would really wish we had is like her whole section on
I know what you're going to say.
How to choose
totally. I want to get into that right now because so she has this section that you're going to know about when you read it, Dear Bare Nakeds, but it's all about look, when you're deciding partnership, why do we, spend more time deciding on an outfit than, not really, but we spend so much time on these certain decisions of our life, but this huge decision, we're not methodical about making, right? We're not looking 10 years in advance or 20 years in advance. We're not thinking about the future. We're
about these really important things.
Right.
Like, what's this guy going to be like running a household with?
Yeah. Does this guy know how to do laundry? Does this guy know how to cook a meal?
What are his opinions on parenting, or just what makes a good kid? Really big things that very rarely, at least in our experience, came into the conversation when we were dating
20 years ago.
Yeah.
But
also it was in my experience, it was considered a huge turnoff to get to even kind of venture to those serious topics. You don't
want to scare them off.
Totally.
Right.
Keep it light. You're going to be cool with everything kind of.
Right.
Vibe.
And then go in. But
I wish that we'd asked her, because she says students come to her off to office hours and ask about these things, and she advises them, and then she comes back and they tell her how it went, whether they're still with the person or not. So I think we're wondering whether this generation is different. Are they having these real conversations with potential mates?
Also, I just think that there's so much like margin for user error. Just in the sense that like when I was in my 20s dating my now husband, I was completely different. Like, I mean, I was relatively the same human, but I mean, I've evolved, thankfully, like a lot in the last 20 years. And my idea of who I am and what I want and, all of my ideals and goals have really changed with me. So it's like, how can you possibly
know the
questions that you should be asking? Yes. And then also like, you just look at your person and you're like, it'll all work out.
Yeah.
You're like, you're great. I'm great. We're here together. We like, we're going to make really beautiful babies and it'll all just figure itself out. Right.
Yeah. But in the same way that like parenting, as she was talking about, wasn't even a thing before the 90s.
Right.
I wonder whether kids these days are like thinking about relationships differently than we did.
Right. Relationshipping.
Yeah.
Like parenting.
Oh,
like you're not just like in a relationship, you're like relationshipping.
Maybe that's going to be like,
maybe that's it.
Man, maybe we should get on board with that.
All right. Well, I'm going to start thinking about like my renegotiation of my deal.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.